So guys, I'm gonna apologize right now for walking around with the camera, but it's the only way I can cover everything. If you haven't noticed by now, that's my rear tire off the Mud Mower. And there seems to be something inside, if you can see it. And that is the brand spanking new grader box that scraper box that I just made. And it is all bent up and warped and snapped. Well, long story short, I was grading and I went to take a corner, and apparently that tire caught that arm of the grader, brought it up and over the tire, took this bar, bent it around, wrapped it in behind and around the axle. The result of which was this. So what's today's goal? Today's goal is to tear this out and find out just exactly how much damage was done, whether my custom locker block held, and swap out transmissions. I actually have another transmission I got a hold of by a guy who got a hold of me today when he found out about this and pulled it out of a tractor he had in his backyard. So, happy days for good people. Now let's get it torn apart. So I was about to drop the transaxle, but I figured I'd show you what came out of the wheel hub once I beat the snot out of it. And so this is what actually came out of the wheel once I beat it enough in order to get it to pop out the other side. And we'll see if we can zoom in here. You can actually see the crack going through it. And so I literally stress fractured and seared it right off when I caught that piece of metal. So I really can't wait to see what my locker looks like inside. Alright guys, so I figured we'd cover a couple of things before I ended up tearing into this transmission. I wanted you to be able to see the fact that obviously it's still grungy, it has not been torn open. First of all, if you guys haven't seen his channel, you should check out LaPV Mac. We were discussing belt retainers the other day, and so this is how I set up mine for everybody who's been asking. Basically, on the Peerless 6-speed, there's a retaining nut that's here stock, which normally would have this belt retainer attached to it. So what I did was I bent that belt retainer in against the belt while I had it mounted with tension on the belt. So I bent that in, and then I came over, and then normally it would come all the way out to here. So what I did was I heated it up, I bent it down, I bent it back across, and then I dropped it into the original factory retainer. If you're looking for one of these bars, they come stock on a Craftsman 1000. And then I took this piece and I welded it back across and I dropped it down and I glued a grommet onto it so that way if the belt did catch it, that it would just slip. The other thing I wanted to show you is, if I can set this at an angle so you can see, I'm going to turn the pulley, and as you can see, alright guys, the axle is turning. I'm not going to bother removing this pulley because we don't need to for what we're doing, because it's such a small pulley you can get to all the screws. But if you need help with removing one of these, I'll post a link down in the description and at the end of this video for you, so that you're able to learn how to remove these when they're really stuck. So basically we got all our screws out, including the very two inappropriate term bolts that are on the very bottom. And we got our lead mallet, which is starting to show that it needs to be remade. And we're going to go at it and get this thing cracked open so that you guys can see exactly what went, whether anything got broken. And don't forget the stupid ball and spring that are going to fall out. Well, let's see. On the top of that, There's no scraping that wasn't there other than what originally happened when I blew the differential the first time, so that looks really good. And looking at the gears, everything looks really solid. All of the gears are rotating just fine. The axle actually seems to be spinning without any problem. Well, other than the shifter being in the wrong spot. So we'll disengage that. So let's see. The axle rolls perfectly. It did not at all damage the differential that I welded. So basically that tells me that I'm definitely going to go with the locker block. I'll open it up a little bit further and I'll show you guys up close whether we have any stress fractures or anything. So there we are. As you can see, the locker block, let me get behind the camera. As you can see, the locker block is totally intact. And the pin actually looks as if it still can be removed in the middle. Just like it's supposed to be, so I didn't even bend the inside locker block. So there we go, guys. I'll post a how-to in order to make this locker block, because obviously the differential survived. That, on the other hand, didn't. Alright guys, so everything's all put back together. It runs, shifts through all 6 gears. I didn't blow anything inside of the tranny at all. All I did was snap off that axle. So I guess my locker design must be worth something after all, because otherwise I would have blown the snot out of the locker with a regular setup. I also thought I'd show you something else. I picked this up the other day. It's a 12.5, has a 5-speed. Unfortunately, it's a Spicer. But I thought the exhaust might be of interest to some of you. So for those of you who have debated whether putting a motorcycle exhaust from a small CC motorcycle onto a 12-speed was a good idea, here we go. Yeah, so there you go, guys. I know some of you on the main Mud Mowers Facebook group have talked about it and debated it, so that's what it sounds like. Unfortunately, this one's coming off. It's actually managed to break the exhaust manifold bolts off, so I'm gonna have to tap and die those out. Return this thing to stock so that I can resell it. I'll use the hood from the go-kart build in order to put this back to factory. And it should easily resell for somewhere in the $250 to $300 category. Duckies!